Okay, we've talked about this personal factor in this dynamic determinism model. Let's move to the second factor, which is behavior. So by behavior in this model's context, we are talking about the responses to stimuli in the environment to achieve a goal, including social learning. So basically, this is a behavior we are gonna enact to acquire some information, some knowledge, to learn some new behaviors and actions. And this social learning can include the following processes: attention, retention, production, and motivation. So we're gonna explain each of these 4 steps one by one. The first one is attention. That refers to your cognitive process of selectively concentrating on one aspect of the environment. Well, we can see there are millions of pieces of information in this environment. We cannot pay close attention to every single piece of information in this environment. We are gonna be really selective, paying close attention to something we are interested in learning, and pay close attention to something which may interest us. That is attention. And second one, we call it retention. That is, we're gonna remember or store this observed information in our mind so that it can be successfully recalled and reconstructed later. So this is a process you are gonna install the information you have paid close attention to in the environment and store it in your mind and for later use, for later's reconstruction. And third one is, it is a process you are going to retrieve this information and reconstruct the memories of observations and put it into use. So it is a process of output. You want to create something using the memories, using the information stored in your mind. The last one is the motivation. That is any reason, any incentive, enthusiasm, or interest that would cause a specific action. So these are the 4 steps for us to do a social learning. And let me use you guys, let me kind of give you guys a concrete example. So let's say you are learning this social cognitive theory. And I use this PowerPoint, I use my audio, I use these videos to get and to maintain you guys' attention. And of course, I believe some of you are taking notes to maintain the attention to this knowledge, to this lecture. So that is the first step of social learning. You are paying attention to my lecture, to this PowerPoint, instead of your social media, Facebook, your Instagram. And when you want to store this knowledge, this information into your mind, you move to the second phase of social learning, that is retention. You can accomplish this retention step through several ways. For instance, after this lecture, you may want to kind of recap what was delivered in this lecture. And some of you may use note-taking as a way to store that information in your mind. And no matter what kind of ways you are using, you want to store this information in your mind for later use. Either to get a good grade in your second exam for our class, or you want to kind of store this information, store this knowledge to kind of put it into practice in your daily life. No matter what kind of purpose you are having for storing this information, you are doing this second step, that is the retention, remembering the information for later use. And third one is the production. That is, you want to create something based on the information you've learned. And this production is something I really care about in my teaching. As you may be aware, I incorporated lots of class activities or question discussions in my class. So I hope I can use this as a way to motivate you guys to produce, to create something and make best use of the knowledge you stored in your mind. And this is the third step of social learning, that is, you are making some output. And last one is motivation. That is any incentives, any enthusiasms, or any interest that would cause a specific action. So to encourage or to motivate, or you would say force you guys to produce, to accomplish this production phase, I offered the credit or use the grading to motivate you guys, or you could say to force you guys to make some output to practice the knowledge in our lecture. So that is these 4 steps of social learning. I think it is pretty straightforward. And next, I'm gonna elaborate a little bit more on this motivation. So what kind of motivations we could have or we could use to encourage people to take an action? We have this positive and negative reinforcement as motivations. So the assumption is that whenever people enact a behavior, they have the ability to foresee a possible consequence. So what kind of consequence people may experience or they foresee they would experience would serve as this positive and negative reinforcement. So let's say if you want to enact a behavior and you foresee a desirable consequence, something desirable, something positive, and we call this one as a positive reinforcement. So let's say if you study hard, it is because you believe that studying hard can make you get a good grade. So this good grade will serve as this positive reinforcement. And in contrast, this negative reinforcement is an undesired event or consequence you foresee after enacting an action or behavior. So that is kind of a potential punishment or penalty you expect of engaging in a wrong behavior. Let's say in a party, your friends want you to have a reckless drink with them, but you don't want to do so. It is because you expect that if you drink too much alcohol, you're going to experience a really severe hangover the next day. And probably this will also affect your performance in next day's exam or in your work, in your school. So this hangover and this bad performance in next day you expect after a big drink, this will serve as a negative reinforcement. And this negative reinforcement would prevent you from engaging in this wrong behavior. So these are these 2 possible reinforcements we could have as a motivations to enact a certain behavior. And I also prepared a multimedia example to illustrate this positive and negative reinforcement. And this video clip is from Big Bang Theory, and let's take a look at how Sheldon uses this positive and negative reinforcement to give Penny a training. So I hope you guys enjoy this video clip, and after it, come back to our lecture and we're going to talk about the last element of this model. Okay, welcome back to our lecture, and we're going to move to the last factor of this model, which is the environment. So environment is made up of the surroundings around us, including people who are present. So this environment can include both the physical and some kind of intangible context. The physical context would include something like the layout of your furniture, what kind of things you could touch, what kind of things around you, such as books or computers or, I don't know, video games. And this environment also includes people around you, such as your families, your friends, I don't know, your colleagues. And for this environment, I want to talk about a concept called learned helplessness. And this refers to a behavior that occurs when people repeatedly endure painful or aversive stimuli which they are unable to avoid. Let me describe you a scenario or a phenomenon I actually encountered a lot for myself and also for some people around me. So I knew some undergraduate, especially the freshmen, as my friends. And during their freshmen, they wanted to find an internship. But after several kind of interviews, they got rejected because they didn't have enough qualifications for that position. So these freshman friends, they felt so defeated. And for the 4 years later in their undergraduate study, they didn't even give it another try. I asked them why. They said, I got repeated rejections again and again, and I don't think I can make it anymore. Well, in this situation, they are actually experiencing this learned helplessness. The thing is, well, probably for their first year, their qualifications were not good enough. But they didn't realize that actually after 2 or 3 years of studying and learning, their qualifications would have dramatically increased. And this probably would make them much more qualified for this position. So they're actually learning this learned helplessness, and they were not aware that they have improved a lot. They have grown a lot. So this helplessness or hopelessness behaviors or perceptions are actually a learned process. So this is kind of the basic idea of this learned helplessness. And of course, this is a barrier for people to gain further development and achieve something bigger. And next, I want to talk about the experiment proving this learned helplessness. So you can see this dog was placed in such a box, and this box was separated into two small chambers. At one chamber, they could give some electric shock. So first, the researchers would give this chamber some small electric shock, and the dog quickly kind of jumped over to this chamber with no electric shock. And then the researchers increased this hurdle to a position and completely block this dog from jumping over to this chamber. And again, give this chamber some electric shock. And this time, the dog realized that he cannot jump over to this side of the box, and what he can do is to suffer from this shock. And for the third time, even though the researcher cannot completely removed this hurdle, but dog experienced some learned helplessness. He didn't even give it a try to jump over to this part of this box. So this is an experiment showing that these dogs they experience this learned helplessness. After they suffered from this aversive stimuli, they have been conditioned to believe that they cannot escape from this aversive environment. I also prepared a media example. It's actually a social experiment conducted in a classroom to show this learned helplessness. I believe it is a really fun video to watch. So I hope after talking about this concept, you guys are aware or become more aware that you are always growing and you cannot always be in an aversive environment all the time. So take a developing perspective to see yourself and have more confidence in yourself. So that is everything I want to cover for this social cognitive theory and this reciprocal determinism model. So get back to our first question in today's class, nature or nurture, which decides who we are today. I guess the answer was pretty much revealed in this Bobo-Doll experiment. Remember the two major findings. First, the aggressive role model made the kids more aggressive. And second, boys are more aggressive than girls. So apparently, it is both the environment and our genes co-deciding who we are today. I hope you like this theory, and I'll see you guys in next week.